Kabbalistic gravity. That's the phrase that I've coined for this, that I like using, because gravity means essentially that something will go down, right? Given the laws of physics of at least of our planet, so something that's up, if there's nothing holding it up, artificially, it will, or extraneously, externally, it will fall down until its lowest point. That's the law of gravity. There's a pull. Things are going down. So in a similar vein, there is a pull when it comes to spiritual energy. Spiritual energy begins on high in a very ethereal, metaphysical state, non-physical state, and then it descends slowly through what we call Seder Hishtalshalut, which means the order or the chain of evolution of the worlds, and it filters down into our environment. So this is true of all created beings, all created matter, and it's also true of the blessings that we enjoy. The stars, the constellations, in the language of Kabbalah, are the last step of this process, where the realm of the constellations, that is where the spiritual energy hits in the final stage to then be delivered to our planet, to our world. Now, if you look at the stars and analyze them, in a physical way, you're probably not going to see that. But that is the way the Kabbalists speak about the realm of the stars, as part of this mechanism of moving ethereal energy down into a more materialistic state. So that's point number one. This is related to the word Mazel. Now, the word Mazel, you and I know very well, right? Mazel Tov. We wish people congratulations by telling them Mazel Tov. What does Mazel Tov mean? So most people translate it as, well, Tov is good. Mazel Tov, most people translate it as good luck. But it's not good luck at all. It's rather good fortune or good constellation. What we're wishing somebody when we wish them Mazel Tov is that we wish that the flow of energy, of blessing from above, that spiritual flow of blessing, should manifest below and not get stuck in anywhere, at any stage in between, that there should not be an impediment to the blessing, but rather it should flow down. So to give an example, if you've ever used a hose to water your lawn, so you know that sometimes you can have the hose connected, you can have the, I don't know what you call it, right? The thing turned on, I'm sure there's a medical term for it, right? The spigot, whatever, the faucet, yeah. So you can have it turned on, and yet there's nothing coming out. The line can be bent, and if it's bent at the wrong angle or too strong of an angle, the water's going to stop. It's not going to go through. So what has to happen is you have to open up the pipes. You have to make sure that everything is flowing correctly, right? Everything has to flow in order to go through. So in a similar way, we also have the same need when it comes to spiritual blessings. So although the spiritual blessings are real, and they're many, sometimes on the way down, God forbid, it can get stuck along the way. And so when we wish someone Mazel Tov, what we're wishing is that the blessings should indeed rain down upon the person in a manifest, in a real way, in a way that's real and manifest and tangible. We don't wish that somebody have theoretical blessings or spiritual blessings that are stuck in a spiritual state, but rather the blessings come manifest below. Now this explains, and this is something that you might have studied with me in the past if you've been studying with me for a little while, this explains the nature of the prayers that we do on the high holidays and the work that we do the rest of the year. Okay, so I hate to be the bearer of news. I'm not going to say bad news, but news. But high holidays are around the corner. Yep, you heard me right. High holidays are around the corner. It's we're already in the month of Menachem Av, right? Today is the 5th day of Av. So next month is El, and right after El is Tishrei, which is the high holiday season. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, my friends. It is happening. It is happening. Did I freeze or did you freeze? Or did we both freeze? Can you guys see me?
Rabbi, I think we lost.
Oops. Folks, I'm back and better than ever.
Now I can see but don't hear.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Listen, I got thrown off for like. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
But come back.
Last thing we heard was about the high holidays are around the corner.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna get back to it. I just want to say this. I don't know why or how it happens, but once in a while there's a glitch in the matrix, and boom, Zoom goes out for a moment and then it comes back in. My internet connection, thank God, is strong, so who knows? We'll chalk it up to maybe too much information being downloaded from above, and maybe it threw off something. Anyway, getting back to the point. So we're coming up to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the high holidays. And on Rosh Hashanah, it's Yom Hadin, the days of judgment, and everything is written. We're inscribed for a good year. Yom Kippur, we're sealed, and everyone shows up and prays, and it's a whole big deal. And it should be a big deal, by the way. It's wonderful that it's a big deal. But it's a whole big deal. We're praying. On this day we read, God determines Kama Yavrun v'Kama Yibareyun, how many will pass and how many will be born, who will live and who will die. All of these huge considerations. So the Kabbalists ask the following question. All of this is being determined on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Yeah? And we put in the energy, we put in the effort, we invest, and we pray, and we shofar up, and we fast, and we do all the things that we need to do. Dip the apples in the honey, right? All of this stuff. We do all of this stuff, yeah? Great. And and we know that God is going to inscribe us and seal us for a good year. Good. Here's the question. Here's my question. So do we have to show up the rest of the year? Do we have to do anything the rest of the year? Are we good? Is that it? 3 days a year, done, right? In the books. Well, hold on. We've already been signed and sealed, delivered, right? I'm yours for a good year, right? So it should be over, right? We're done. Not so fast. But how do you explain it? Right? Judaism says, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, very important, but also Sunday morning, July 26th. Say some prayers, do a mitzvah. Very important. Why? Well, you could say, well, doing good things is always good. But specifically vis-a-vis the prayers that we do and the requests. Didn't we already request it on the big days and get it? So what's going on? I'm about to drop a major idea on you. And again, maybe you've heard it from me before. Maybe you've studied it before elsewhere. But this is a major and important idea. A little commercial here for Intown Jewish Academy. What's the L'chaim, Stephanie, and David? I saw you also rocking it before. So what's the message? The message is as follows: that the blessings that are allocated on the high holidays are blessings that are allocated in the spiritual bank account above, so to speak. If you want to draw it on Sunday, July 26th, you got to go to the ATM. I'm not calling God an ATM machine, but I'm just saying you have to then invest further effort. There's one thing to get it, to put the effort in, to get it into the bank account. But and the bank account doesn't help you, right now, pay cash for whatever it is. Sounds so nefarious. Pay cash for whatever it is you need to pay cash for. If you want that cash right now, you have to do an additional effort and draw it and pull it from that bank account into your wallet, into your pocket. In a similar vein, we have this interplay between high holidays and every other day of the year, where on the high holidays we draw from the highest of levels into our spiritual bank account of blessings. But there it remains until we draw it down into our physical environs, into our physical world, and make it manifest. And that requires an additional effort. All of the prayers on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur are determining theoretically, not theoretically, but practically theoretically, what we could get this year. But there still needs to be an additional effort to draw it and make it real, make it manifest into our environment. That's the role of prayer every single day. So it's good to pray. It's necessary to pray on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and the high holidays to get it there, wherever that collection is for us. But then we have to draw it down. So it's kind of like, imagine if somebody said to you, this is kind of a cool thing. Imagine, this is a good thought to have. Imagine if someone said to you, every single day, I'm going to wire into your bank account $10,000 every single day. What a machaya, right? $10,000 or $50,000 every single day. Every single day at 5 a.m. in your bank account will be this amount of money. Whatever you use today is yours. But come midnight, whatever's left is gone until the next morning. Right? So let me ask you a question. Come 5 a.m., what are you thinking? Right? 6 a.m., 7 a.m., what are you going to be thinking? Let me pull out this incredible blessing. These incredible funds. Let me pull them out. You're not going to say, well, whatever. You're gonna be on your game to pull it out. So the same thing is true spiritually. It's not even spiritually. The same thing is true physically, but spiritually. Right? God has put into our accounts, we believe, because of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we did what we needed to do, the most incredible blessings. But every day there's a further effort that's required to draw it. So you and I, we want to sleep and not draw it? Come on, we don't want to sleep on the game over here. We want to, whatever the right expression is, we want to make sure we're doing what we need to do to pull it and to enjoy it. Why leave the cash behind? It's also the cash. I mean, it's the spiritual blessings that can translate into physical blessings. So why leave it behind? So this is how the Kabbalists explain the role of prayer on the high holidays and the role of prayer every single day. There's a judgment. In other words, there's an effort that's needed to pull for the general account, for us specifically, but the general account on a spiritual level. And then there's a need to pull it down in a tangible way. So this ties into the constellations, because again, the stars are not just the stars. The Kabbalists explain that the stars, the constellation, the zodiac, the mazalot, Mazel is singular for star, mazalot is plural for stars. The mazalot, the stars, the constellations, are a part of the process of the journey of the system of spiritual blessings manifesting and translating into a physical space. The final checkpoint after which spiritual energy becomes materialized is the realm of the constellations. So, when we wish someone Mazel Tov, you know what it really means? Not good luck, not even good fortune. What it means is, may your Mazel, may your flow of blessings be unimpeded, be uninhibited, be uninterrupted, not have that bend, that kink in the hose of the blessings. May the faucet be turned on, and may the blessings flow in an uninterrupted, unbroken way whatsoever. That's the blessing of Mazel Tov. Because the word Mazel is also related to the word Nozel. Nozel. Nun Vav Zayin Lamed. In Hebrew, that's Hebrew. In English, Nozel, Nozel. Like Mazel, Mazel. Nozel is Nozel. Nozel. Nozel might sound like nozzle. What's nozzle? Yeah? Is that at all related conceptually?
It's like the spigot.
Yeah, so maybe conceptually there might be some English etymological, language root that connects it. But in Hebrew, the word nozel, kind of like nozzle, and nozel means flow. It means flow. Literally, it means flow. Like when you turn on water and it flows down, or you open a pipe, you channel water, that flow is called nozel. Nozel means to flow. So Mazel is also related etymologically, in the language way, to Nozzle. It means the flow. The stars, the constellations, are that which are flowing. So Sandrine just asked in the chat, I think it was Sandrine, what is the difference between Kochavim, stars, and Mazalot, stars? There's no difference. In fact, the Kabbalists will say Kochavim umazalot. They will combine the two together. The stars and maybe Mazalot are more like the constellation, like the arrangement of the stars. But it really refers to the same realm, the same things. But the word Mazal or Mazalot connotes the role that the stars play spiritually. In other words, Kochavim just means the star or stars. Mazalot reflects the role that the stars play in the flow of the blessings, the flow of the spiritual energy from above to below, from a spiritual realm to a physically manifest realm. So Mazel, Nozel. Now let's continue. So many of you, maybe all of you, are familiar with the 13 attributes of mercy or kindness. The background of these 13 attributes goes back to the times following the episode following the sin of the golden calf. Give me a second. I want to pull it up. 34. Okay, I'm pulling up Exodus 34 so that we can study it together. By the way, just to clarify, what am I pulling up? I'm pulling up the 13 attributes of mercy. But before I pull it up, let me give you the background. So the Jews were slaves in Egypt for a few hundred years. And then God sends Moses and the 10 plagues, and the Exodus transpires. Then we have the splitting of the sea, when the Egyptians chased the Jewish people, trapped them at the Red Sea, and the sea splits. The Jews are saved. The Egyptians are punished for trying to, once again, destroy the Jewish people. Then, 50 days later, after the Exodus, the Jews find themselves at the foot of Mount Sinai, and they hear the 10 Commandments. They hear God's voice, give them the 10 Commandments, and they get the foundations of the law of Judaism. Moses goes up in the mountain to hear more details, and the rest of the Torah, the rest of the 613 mitzvot, comes down 40 days later to find the Jewish people dancing around the golden calf. Right? That was the shock. Some shock value in the book of Exodus. The shock is one of the shocks is the golden calf. Moses left us for 40 days, and by the time he came back, there we were, having heard God say, I am the Lord your God. You shall not have any other gods. Do not make any graven images, etc., etc. A mere 40 days later, there we are doing the hora around the golden calf. Okay, so that's the story. And what happens? Even before he descends the mountain, Moses turns to God and says to God, you got to forgive the Jewish people. Mind you, this is after God had told Moses, you might want to go down because your people have completely gone off the rails. Moses does not, before he goes, Moses doesn't know about it. God knows about it. So God says to Moses, you might want to check this out. You might want to leave here and deal with the stuff that's going on. And there's going to be a tremendous fallout. Moses says, sight unseen, he says, I don't care what they did. You have to promise to forgive them. He's the ultimate defender of his people. He says, you have to forgive. I don't know exactly what they did. So it's not like he's defending him from a place of logic. He's defending from a place of an absolute. Like, there has to be forgiveness. There has to be a path of forgiveness. Because if not, then this whole thing is never going to work. By the way, this is an important teaching in life that can be applied to many different areas. So take it and apply it as you wish. There has to be, Moses argues to God, you have to have an opening, an escape hatch, a way back. There has to be an undo button. There must be in your system, right? One of the greatest things that Microsoft, Word, Office, whatever, introduced is the undo button, right? That when you make a change to your document or you delete a paragraph, it's not gone forever. There's a way back. There's a way you can hit an arrow, little backwards arrow, and go back. I don't know who came up with that, but whoever came up with that was channeling their inner Moses, right? Moses basically says to God, we need an undo button. We need a control. What is it? Control Z? Yeah, we need a control, at least in Windows. You need a control Z. You need to be able to go back, and maybe back before that, and back before that. Maybe we're backing up our computers and going back to a previous state when everything was pristine, before the files were corrupted. Bottom line is, we need to be able to go back. There needs to be the ability to go back. And God says, you got it. But you still have to go down and deal with the fallout. So Moses goes down, and eventually, God reveals to Moses his 13 attributes of mercy. In other words, in simple terms, what this means is God tells Moses, and it's printed in the Torah, so tells us also, because we got the whole Torah. So God tells us and Moses that God ultimately is kind and forgiving and looking forward to a human being getting back to a better place. Lest we think that God is all, angry and judging and smiting and smoting and vindictive and whatever. Take it easy. God is kind and merciful. And God gives us these beautiful verses that contain the 13 attributes of mercy, which essentially mean 13 expressions of God's mercy, kindness, compassion, love, forgiveness for us, etc. And every day in our prayers, after the Amidah, we recite the 13 attributes of mercy, just to remind God of how loving and kind and generous and forgiving He is, in case we or He forgets. Not that God will forget, but to remind everyone, all parties involved, of God's promise to be open-minded and understanding of our frailties. By the way, just a general point. God designed us. More than we're aware of our own frailties, God is certainly aware of our limitations. God created us in a way that we have temptations, limitations, frailties, failings, flaws, etc. It's not a glitch in the matrix. It's by design. So don't worry, God gets it, but we still have to do our part. We still have to hit the undo button and get to a better place. But God always provides that hatch, that escape hatch. I'm going to share my screen with you. Let's read the 13 attributes of mercy inside together. I'll read it. You can follow along. I'm just going to do the first. Let me make this bigger. 100% is not big enough. There we go. 125. Okay, so take a look. This is Exodus chapter 34, verse 1. The Lord said to Moses, "Carve 2 tablets of stone like the first, and I will inscribe upon the tablets the words that were on the first tablets which you shattered." Again, this is the aftermath of the golden calf, of that sin. As I forgot to mention before, when Moses does come down that mountain and sees the sin of the golden calf happening, what does Moses? Moses is carrying the tablets. What does he do? He shatters them. He breaks them. So now, as God finally, fully forgives the Jewish people, so God says, and by the way, regarding those tablets, make a second pair, make a second set, so that we got the tablets again. By the way, parenthetically, let me stop sharing my screen for a second so I can see you better. Why does Moses break the tablets? So typically we understand because he was angry, he was upset, like, how dare you serve idols, smash. But that seems to be misplaced anger. Well, first of all, it seems to be anger, which doesn't sound cool for Moses. Number 2, it seems misplaced. Because the Jewish people are messing up, you break God's tablets? That seems a little random, right? Because I'm upset at so-and-so, I should smash your car? I mean, God forbid, right? That doesn't make any sense. Why is Moses taking out his anger, if that's what it's about, on God's tablets? It seems to be very unnecessary and very not nice. You're upset at the people, so then take something out of the people. Why are you taking something out on God's tablets? Okay. So the deeper understanding of this is that it wasn't from a place of anger. On the contrary, it was from a place of love. Why does Moses break the tablets? Because what did the tablets say? Don't serve idols. So Moses breaks the tablets and breaks any reference to the sin that they were violating. He's tearing up the contract, once again defending the people before God. This is Moses' ultimate act of leadership, and it's the final thing. Actually, it's the final verses of the Torah. Like at the end of the book of Deuteronomy, the last words of the Torah refer to, it's like a eulogy of Moses. There's never been someone like Moses who did so much, etc., all the wonderful things that he did. And then the last words are, Le'enei kol Yisrael. All the things that he did, all the wonders that he did before the eyes of all Israel. Rashi, the foremost biblical commentary, says, what is the reference to? What are the great wonders that he did before the eyes of all the people? Not the plagues, not the splitting of the sea, but the shattering of the tablets. That's the last reference of the Torah, the very last reference in Torah, and a reference to Moses, and his greatest act is shattering the tablets. Why? It wasn't about anger. It was about defending the people. He broke the contract. They broke the contract, so he broke the contract. He broke any remnant of the contract, saying to God, I don't know what you're talking about. They violated the law. What law? I must have misplaced it. I can't find it. This is the original version of shredding documents. By the way, I'm not advocating the shredding of documents to get away with, crimes and whatnot. I'm just saying, what I am saying is that Moses did break the tablets to destroy any recollection of the law that they had allegedly broken. What law? I don't see a law. I don't know what it says. It's broken. That was Moses. Moses loved God, loved Torah, but more than everything, he loved his people. And so he by the way, I didn't mention this before. Still on the mountain, Moses says to God, before he even came down the mountain, forgive the Jewish people, v'im ayin, and if not, mecheni na misivcha asher kasafta. Erase me from your book that you've written. That's what Moses says. Either forgive the people, create that escape hatch, undo button, delete button, whatever it is, or I don't want any part of this whole situation. If you can't create that path back, understanding the inherent frailties and flaws of human beings that you created, if you can't give people a way back, then I'm out, he says. Chapter 32, that was chapter 32, verse 32 of the book of Exodus. Lamed Bet, which spells the word lev, heart. The heart of the book of Exodus, the heart of the heart. Chapter 32, verse 32, is about Moses defending his people to that point. Let me share my screen with you. We're getting to the 13 attributes of mercy. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten why we're here. 13 attributes of mercy are going to emerge right over here. Verse 5. The Lord came down in a cloud. He stood with him, Moses, there, and proclaimed the name Lord. The Lord passed before him and proclaimed. Here we go. Buckle up. 13 attributes of mercy begin right now. The Lord, a God compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in kindness and faithfulness, extending kindness to the 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin. Yet he does not remit all punishment, but visits the iniquity of parents upon children and children's children upon the 3rd and 4th generations. Okay, well, I went too far because I went after the 13 attributes of mercy. There is a mention of there being some repercussions, right, over there, yet he does not remit all punishment, but visits iniquity. That's not part of the 13 attributes of mercy. That is, now we're getting commentary, that is, let me close this. That is a message that's just to be mindful that there are consequences indeed, and sometimes consequences can happen, can have an impact on future generations. Not that children are punished for parents, but at the end of the day, a reality that's created is a reality that has an effect after the parties perhaps have moved on. The bottom line is, though, that God does, the predominant theme here is the notion of love, compassion, graciousness, forgiveness, etc. There are 13 expressions of God's compassion and mercy contained in these verses. There are different ways to break it down, but within these are 13 messages. Now, the Kabbalists explain the following. I'm going to stop sharing, and so I can see you again. The Kabbalists explain that the 13 attributes of mercy are stemming from a Kabbalistic understanding from the level of Arich Ampin. This is one of the dimensions of the realm of Keter. So let's explain this. So Keter refers to a transcendent dimension that exists beyond the scheme, beyond the scope of the traditional Seder Hishtalshalut, or the order of the evolution or the chain of creation of the worlds. So we have different realms, different worlds, and beyond that, in a transcendent space, is the notion of Keter. Now, Keter literally means crown. So let me explain this using a more physical example, and that will help us understand the concepts, and then we can go back and understand it in a more abstract way. But let's understand it first in somewhat, yeah.
Can you say again what you were calling it? What is it called?
Keter?
What is it?
Keter, K-E-T-E-R. Keter. And,
thank you.
Sure, and it means crown. Keter literally means crown. Now, let me explain what that means. So, if you recall, we have 10 sphirot, 10 divine energies. 7 are emotional, 3 are intellectual. So, think about the head for a moment. Chachma, Bina, Dat, intellectual powers. Those are the highest of the 10 sphirot. Well, get this. What's above the head? Right, those are all in the head. Again, metaphorically, the head. What's above the head is the crown. Crown is that which even higher than the head, and the intelligence is a crown that's worn above the head. Right? So the crown represents something that transcends even intellect. Within the human realm, that would be the powers of pleasure or desire. And by the way, these are forces that we've spoken about before in our classes Sunday mornings. So let's talk about, for example, pleasure. Pleasure is irrational, right? You can't explain pleasure rationally. Somebody asks, I'm going to give a very simple and very, very simple example. Let's talk about taste, physical taste. Some people like, this type of food. Some people like that type of food. You ask somebody, why do you like that food? And they answer, because it tastes good. Why does it taste good to you? You can't answer that question. You can't logically answer that question. Why does this taste good to that person and that not taste good to someone else? Yeah. Why do people prefer, this wine over that wine, or this beverage over that beverage, or that food over that? There's no logical explanation for it. It's a matter of taste, and taste is drawing on pleasure. In other words, it's a matter of what feels or tastes or is experienced as good to that person. That's not a logical thing, that's a super logical thing. The same thing is with desire. The things that we desire are not always logical. There are things that we desire, that we want, based on logical consideration, but there are some things that we want that aren't logical, that we can't explain. In the language of Kabbalah, quoting the first Chabad Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, he says, in Yiddish, Eifataiva is Kain Kasha. He says, when it comes to a desire, you can't ask the question why. It's not a valid question. Why do you want? Why do I want? I want because I want. Sometimes you could ask and answer that question, but oftentimes you can't. When a desire is stemming from a place that's deeper than the logical mind, you can't ask why. Why? Why do you like that color? Why do you want that thing? I can't explain. It's just what I want. So Keter, these are two forms of on a human level, these are two dimensions of our reality that are generally referred to under the umbrella of Keter. Keter meaning the crown that transcends logic, that transcends rationale. These are not rational considerations. It's not like it tastes good because of a formula, or a logical formula, or that I want it because of a logical formula. No, pleasure and desire are essentially beyond logic and are referred to as the realm of Keter, the crown. Now, within the crown, there's two dimensions, and the two dimensions that I mentioned. We have the deeper dimension and the more external dimension. The deeper dimension is called Atik. Atik Yomin. Atik means ancient. Ancient of days. It's the deeper dimension of Keter, and that's pleasure. And then you have the more external dimension of Keter, which is Arech Ampin, which is what I referenced before. Arech Ampin, which means literally the long face, but it means patience. And that refers to desire, what we want. Now, all of this I'm translating into human terms so that we have an understanding, at least a conceptual understanding, that we can then try to, what's the word I'm looking for, get a little bit more abstract and understand it on a cosmic level, on a divine level. But we have to start with some sort of frame of understanding, so that's why I'm giving you the way this is translated in human experience. In our own experience, there's what you know, logically, and then there's what you like. And those aren't always the same, those don't always line up. You might like something that doesn't make any sense for you to like, but you like it because you like it. You might derive pleasure from something that logically doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter. Or that you can't logically explain. Doesn't matter. That's what you like. It's what you derive pleasure from. Okay. So Keter represents the dimensions beyond. So God's forgiveness, and here's the big idea. The 13 attributes of divine mercy, compassion, forgiveness, do not stem, when it comes to God, from a logical or rational place. I'll say that again. God's 13 attributes of mercy do not stem from logic, divine logic. They go beyond logic. They stem from a place of pure desire and pleasure within God that goes beyond the logical. Let me explain this. From a logical position, if you break the law, especially if you do something that is absolutely going against the foundation of this relationship, like worshiping a golden calf, logic would dictate that we are done. Logic says relationship is over. There's no coming back from this. That's what logic would dictate. When God reveals his 13 attributes of mercy, what he's saying is there's another calculus, there's another formula, there's another dimension within which this relationship exists. And that is a supralogical level. There's a connection that's higher than rationale that's driving this relationship. And from that place, I welcome you back with open arms. To give a simple example, a parent and a child. The parent loves the child, but the parent also has an idea about, and ideas, plural, about how they would love to see their child live, behave, act, etc. Well, what happens when the child does something that the parent is not happy with? I don't only mean when it comes to a 5-year-old kid who's sneaking cookies from the cookie jar. That's way too simple and way too... That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something that a child does that severely disappoints the parent, that goes against all of the values and all of the ethos and all of the teachings and all of the expectations of the parent. Maybe an older child and an older parent. It doesn't have, when I say child, I don't only mean a kid living at home. It does. So what happens? Based on logic, one might say, if this is the philosophy of the parent and the child is going completely against that, you might say that it's done. Relationship is severed. God forbid. But of course we know that no matter what a child does, right, there's always a bond between parent and child. And there's always a place for a parent to love a child, no matter what. And where does that come from? That's not logical. That's what we would call essential love. Not logical love, not rational love, not formulaic love. This is love or a connection that transcends logic, that transcends rationale, that doesn't make sense. I love you because you and I are connected, because you're part of my DNA, because I gave birth to you, whatever it is. I love you because you're my child. That's it. When God reveals his 13 attributes of mercy, fundamentally what God is saying is, I love you, and I will welcome you back with open arms unconditionally because my love runs deeper than logic. If it was based on logic, well, I told you not to serve idols, you served idols, we're done. You had one law, the first law, the second law of the 10 Commandments. You had don't create graven images. You had 3 out of 10 that you're violating. That seems like grounds for complete dismissal. Okay, we're done. Cut the cord. The fact that God says, you know what? We're in it for the long haul together. That's not from a logical place. That comes from an essential place. So there's 2 types of love. Logical love and essential love. Logical love is love that's contingent on a rationale. Essential love is love that runs much deeper than logic, runs much deeper than rationale. Love that you can't quantify under a microscope or in a formula on a chalkboard. It's love that is because it is. Now, in human terms, typically the only context of that love is when it comes to family, because then there is that type of essential bond. Is it possible to create that with friendships and other types of relationships? Yes, but it's a little bit harder because it's not intuitive, it's not natural to the relationship. When it comes to family, it starts off as an essential connection and not a rational connection. You see, a parent is a parent to the child, and the child is the child to the parent, not because it makes sense, but because it happened, right? It just is. There's DNA. There is that connection. So it's not like, oh, yeah, there was an idea that then made sense that these 2 people are connected. It's not an idea. It's a reality. I mean, it's biology. It just is. So there it's easier to understand. It's easier to get to that place of that essential love and that essential connection. And essentially, that's what God is saying. God is saying, you and I are connected on a much deeper level than rationale. Yeah, logic might say, cut ties. Logic might say, even divine logic might say, that's it. Throw in the towel. They're done. You're done with them. You don't need this anymore. Right? Ever hear that expression? I don't need this anymore. Yeah. This is not working out for me. That's what divine logic might say. But then you get to the place of the 13 attributes of mercy, and God says, you know what? Doesn't matter. We're still in it together. I still love you. What can I do? We're connected. I'm stuck with you, and by the way, you're stuck with me, right? We're stuck with God, in a sense, right? We've been through a lot also on our end. So the bottom line is that the 13 attributes of mercy are coming from the realm of Keter that transcends Chachma. I hope the connection points are connecting, right? Keter, we said in human terms, is the supralogical. It's that which runs deeper than rationale. It's pleasure or desire. It's things that don't make sense. Well, God loving us, even though we did that, sin of the golden calf, is coming from that place. God forgiving us, creating that escape hatch. Being able to put the pieces of the shattered tablets together, so to speak, doesn't make sense, and yet God does it and facilitates it and wants it. Guess what? That is completely irrational or super rational. That's coming from the place of arich, of keter. Specifically, the Kabbalists say from the level of arich ampin. Just so you know, if you want to map out the universe, so we have keter, the deeper level is atik, the more external level is arich. It's from arich that the 13 attributes are flowing. But get this, it gets even deeper. And I'm specifically doing some hand motions right now that will indicate what I'm going to talk about next. And that is the beard, facial hair. The Kabbalists say, listen to this, this is kind of cool. The Kabbalists say that the facial hair, the beard, is a symbol of the 13 attributes of mercy. That's what they say. That facial hair is a symbol of the 13 attributes of mercy, which is why, Kabbalistically, we celebrate the beard. It's not only a hipster, it's not only like, edgy and awesome on that level, but it's also, the Kabbalists say, there's also some symbolism. By the way, in case you're wondering, what in the world is the connection? So I don't know that I can explain it logically. The Arizal, by the way, writes, the famed Kabbalist says there are 13 sections of the beard that corresponds to the 13 attributes of mercy. Now, where are these 13 sections and how do you divide it? I'll let you figure that out. I have no idea. But nonetheless, there are different parts of the beard that represent. But think of it this way, and this is true with hair in general. What is hair? Hair is something that originates inside, so to speak, and then breaks through and continues to grow outside. Does that make any sense what I'm saying? So medically, maybe the professionals can help me out on this. The follicle, the hair follicle. Is that beneath the skin? Yes? It is? Perfect. Good. All right, awesome. So you have your follicle, which is the source of the growth, so to speak, or literally, and that's beneath the skin, and what it does is it bursts through the skin. Now this is true, right, with hair on the head also. But the Kabbalists speak about the beard. So the hair starts off inside and then it goes outside. So it's about, get this, it's about ultimately the same idea that we started this class with, which is the flow. It's about that which is in one state becoming manifest in a new state. It's something that exists in a hidden state or realm, like a spiritual realm, becoming manifest in a physical realm and a physical reality. So, the journey of hair, the growth of hair, is similar to the journey of the spiritual blessings poking through the boundaries of our physical existence and being manifest as physical blessings. And all of that is tied into the 13 attributes of mercy, which are all about God giving and blessing, even though things may not be so perfect. So all the points that we talked about thus far should hopefully have just been connected. Right? The goal is to understand, hopefully, the class. So let me just make sure that everyone's with me. We spoke about constellations, we spoke about the flow of divine energy, we spoke about blessings, we spoke about prayer, right? And the flow, we spoke about 13 attributes of mercy, and atik, and arich, and hair, and follicles, and beards. And it's all about the same thing. It's all about the blessings flowing forth and becoming manifest and becoming realized and concretized and actualized in our realm. That's the meaning of the prayers that we do each day. We don't want the blessings just to remain on high from the high holidays. We want them to come down below each and every day. We want to pull it out from the ATM machine, so to speak, and make it real, make it tangible. The hair that grows is also about a follicle, a potential, a seed that comes out above the surface or past the surface, and it's the 13 attributes of mercy. No wonder then that the 13 attributes of mercy are called also Mazel. They're also called Mazel or Mazalot, stars and constellations. Although they are not stars and constellations, but they're called Mazel insofar in the context or with the meaning of the flow of energy. The flow of energy, just like the stars, we said Kabbalistically, are the flow of energy that makes blessings realized, so too the 13 attributes of mercy are also a flow from this deep love of God that is almost not almost, but that's super rational, but it's so deep and intense inside to become manifest in actual forgiveness and second chances in our reality. So it moves from that place of depth of love. It's like, just getting back to the human example, it's like a parent who essentially loves their child no matter what, who then expresses that to the child and says, notwithstanding X, Y, and Z, I still love you. So that's how the deep feeling of the love, or that sense of love inside, pokes through the surface and becomes manifest in the world. When the Torah prints the 13 attributes of mercy, when God articulates it to Moses and then puts it in Torah, that is the deep love of God on the inside, on this super rational realm, poking through the surface and becoming manifest in a way that you and I know about it, and it can inspire us toward getting back on track, knowing that God is ready for us with open arms. Does that make sense, what I just said? Yes? Okay. Now, 13 attributes of mercy. How many constellations are there? How many constellations? How many typical astrological signs are there?
12.
12. Good. And yet there are 13 attributes of mercy. So we say in Kabbalah that one remains even higher than this possibility for manifestation. One is like representing the core, the 13 that stands beyond the 12. Fine. But roughly they line up. So Kabbalah says that when you look at the 13 attributes of mercy, you can actually learn and find the source for various things that are manifest in our reality when you look at the 13 attributes of mercy. So let's understand this by looking at a case study, actually two case studies. And the case studies we're going to focus on tie exactly into the theme that we've been exploring the last several weeks, which is the two powers of Chachma and Bina. So let me say this very clearly. Chachma and Bina, the power of creative intelligence and the power of analytical analysis, which is redundant, and the power of analysis, they both stem from the 13 attributes of mercy, which are symbols of divine, not only divine kindness and beneficence, but this notion of source being manifest into a certain space. These are like the Mazelot, the constellations, which is why our text will refer to them as there is a 13. Oh, nice. Adam is saying that there is sometimes a 13th astrological sign. Excellent. So that would help explain also that the numbering, 13 versus 12. Excellent. I would say the normative system, we usually talk about 12 and not 13, but we do have the 13 attributes of mercy, which means that on some level, the normative system, we usually talk about 12 and not 13, but we do have the 13 attributes of mercy, which means that on some level, there is this 13th energy. Either it's too transcendent to be articulated, or it does show up somewhere. Now, the point here is, and why we're bringing it up today, is in the context of Chachma and Bina, understanding that these two are coming from certain expressions of divine kindness. I'm going to share my screen with you once again. I'm going to do this in the Hebrew, because this is what is discussed. Now, if you look at the first word in Hebrew, in verse number 7, the first word is Nozer. In English, it says extending. I don't like that translation, but nonetheless, it's the translation that we have here. The translation that I prefer is withholding. Not extending, but withholding, which actually is a little bit different and even contradictory. It's not so much extending, it's more withholding. Notezer chesed means withholding kindness. Reserving, maybe reserving would be a better word. God reserves the kindness of goodness, of a good deed, to the 1,000th generation. Which means that when you and I do something good, God holds it, reserves it, keeps it around for 1,000 generations. That's how far that good deed extends. It's a tremendous thing. But the word Notezer literally is meaning not extending, but withholding or reserving. So that's one word we're going to focus on. Again, I'm hovering my mouse. I hesitate to click because every time I click, it opens up a sidebar with commentaries, which I don't need right now. Notezer, right? This word right here, Notezer, or extending but withholding, that is going to correspond to Chachma. That's going to be the source, the mystical source of the power of Chachma, as we'll see in a moment. And the word Venake, which is right here, which is the last of yeah, the translation here is not it's not the ideal translation that I'm looking for. Venake means, in a more literal sense, Venake lo yenake. Okay, we're going to see this inside our text. But the key here is that word Venake is the last word of the 13 attributes of mercy, the last attribute. And Nozer is, I believe, the 7th or 8th of the 13 attributes of mercy. We're going to focus on these. Nozer is going to be the source of Chachma, and Venake is going to be the source of Bina. So to explain this, what I think I want to do here is share a whiteboard. I want to show you something that is pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to write some words in Hebrew. So if you are familiar with Hebrew writing, so you'll find this to be, I mean, you'll see it immediately. If not, just hang on, and hopefully it's going to be clear regardless. So the word Nozer, okay, I'm going to write it in shorthand. That's the word Nozer, which is the 7th or 8th of the attributes of mercy. Nun, Vav, Tzadik, Resh. Nozer. If you switch around the letters, in other words, if you just write them, if you rearrange the letters, you will form this word. Okay, so you see how that's just rearranged? That is there, that is there, that is there, and that is there. Okay, so Nozer can become a tzinar. What is tzinar? What does this word mean? You ready? The word means pipe. Tzinar means a pipe. Tzinar means a pipe or a channel, something in which something flows. The word Nozer, the Kabbalists say, or the expression of the 13 attributes of mercy, all 13 attributes of mercy are the source of manifestation in our world. They're the Mazelot, right? Those constellations, so to speak, that form the origins of what we enjoy here. So Nozer is tzinar, the pipe, and that all equals the power of Chachma. Why Chachma? Because what is Chachma? Chachma is the flow of a new idea from out of nowhere. Chachma is the burst of creative intelligence, that burst of creativity that was unprecipitated. You did not understand it, you did not know it, you didn't have the idea. Out of nowhere, suddenly the idea comes to being. Let's see if I can draw a light bulb. Right? Look at that. Kabbalah and cartoons. That's an interesting shaped bulb. Maybe it's one of those like flood things. Wasn't sure, but nonetheless. So the light bulb going off out of nowhere, that flash of insight, is Chachma. What is Chachma? It's channeling wisdom from the beyond. Really from Keter, which is the beyond, right? From that super rational place. It's channeling information from the beyond. It's like a pipe that is channeling from this reservoir of wisdom, of knowledge, that is beyond what the human mind knew before. The mind, the brain, did not have this information. Chachma is the flow of the idea from beyond into the mind. That is the tzinar. So the word Notezer is tzinar, is the pipe. The pipe is chachma, that flash of wisdom. I hope this whiteboard illustration makes sense. And now I want to share a new whiteboard. Let's see if we can do that here. How do I share a new screen? Is there a way to share a new screen? Whiteboard. More. I feel like there's got to be a way to share a new screen. But any Zoom experts here? I could clear it, but then we can't go back to it. Okay, listen, it is what it is. It was good while it lasted. Let's clear it. No nostalgia here. Okay, so that's Nozer. Nozer is Chachma. Let's clear it. Clear all drawings. Okay, next, Venake. Ready? So here's the word Venake. This was the last of the 13 attributes. Venake. That is the word, Venake. Okay, this word is related to the Hebrew word Yenika. Yenika. It's basically the same. Instead of Venake with a Vav, it's Yenika with two Yuds. But it's, the Nun, the Kuf and the Hey, these letters are all the same. 1, 2, 3. The main consonant letters are the same, Yenika and Venake. What is Yenika? Yenika means to, it's like nursing, or what's the word I'm looking for? It's, it means to nurse a baby, right? And it means to development. The word I'm looking for is development. Okay, Yenika is development. It's like nursing a baby that helps the baby develop. Right, feeding a baby is obviously a good thing. So, development. Yenika is really development. So, what that means is you're taking something that has potential, something that's small, and you're developing it into something larger. Well, guess what? That is exactly the energy of our second intellectual power, which is Bina. What is Bina? Not the flash of wisdom, but it's taking the kernel of the idea of Chachma and developing it and making it wide and deep and long, all three dimensions. It's expanding the idea from a single point, from a single concept, into something that is fully fleshed out. When you have, I got to create a vision. That's step one. That's Chachma. Step two would be to develop the vision, to write up the business plan, to explain how it's going to work, and to write all the details out. That's the development part. So you can have an idea. Oh, let's do this or let's do that. Great idea. That's Chachma. Next is, how are we going to make it work? And what does this look like as we expand it? So, Venake is Yenika, which is development, which is Bina, and Bina is all about the expansion. So, to draw this, because I'm now in the mode of drawing, and it's fun, for me at least right now. So, Chachma, we said, is the point, and Bina is the point expanded in all different directions, right? It's the expansion of the idea. And now, it's suddenly, I feel like I need to do one more, now it's suddenly a big and expanded idea. Now it has dimensionality to it, it has width, breadth, depth, it's fully formed. In the letters, right? Let's clear this once again. In the letters of God's name, this refers to the Yud and the Hey. The Yud is the small point, Chachma, and the Hey is the expansion. So you have Yud, is the Chachma, the core, the seminal idea, the flash of insight. You have a concept. Hey is where you make it, you flesh it out, and it becomes a little bit more real. When I say real, it becomes more actionable, right? It's expanded. So the Yud is just a Yud. The Hey has this side, this side. It's like a three-dimensional, even though it's 2 dimensions here written, but it has space to it. It has expansion. Okay. Let me check the chat box because you may have questions. Let's see. Oh wow, 88 officially recognized constellations. Wow. Who would have thought? 88. Now we got to go back to the Kabbalistic drawing board. What are we going to do with 88? Okay. So, but we're sticking with 12 or 13. Now, what I tried to do thus far is demonstrate how Chachma and Bina, the concepts of Chachma and Bina, Chachma being the kernel of the idea, the root of the idea, the non-fleshed out inspiration of the idea, right? How that is related to the word Nozer. Nozer is the pipe, the tzinar. It's the pipe that's flowing. It's the pipe that's flowing from above, right? It's like the pipe, whatever, that's flowing from above. And then you have the other word, Venake, right, which is Yanika, which is now the development. Now things are expanding in all directions. So you have both the channeling of the new wisdom as well as the expansion of what was. And all of this is to explain how, Kabbalistically, Chachma and Bina have different sources within the realm of Arach Anpin. That's the point. Some people are more gifted with Chachma, they're more creative. Some people are more gifted with Bina, with analytical, with the ability to analyze and develop. And it's not just 2 different powers within the human being, within the human mind. They come from 2 completely different sources above. Within the 13 attributes of mercy, which represent different flows of energy, different sources above. Chachma comes from number 7 or 8, depending on the count, which is Nozer, and Bina comes from number 13, which is Venake. They come from different places. You know, remember the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? Yeah? So the new title, or a new book altogether, is Chachma is from Nozer, and Bina is from Venake. That's it. Different sources, different realms. If you are more creative, that's fantastic. I know you're from Venake, from Nozer. And if you're more analytical, fantastic, Mazel Tov. I know you're from Venake. That's you're more connected with that source. But each of these 2 intellectual abilities are coming from a different place, which furthers our major idea, the major thesis of our argument over the last several weeks has been that although Chachma and Bina seem to work hand in hand, or mind in mind, nonetheless, there you go. Don't worry, it's only seltzer. Although Chachma and Bina seem to work for the 6-year-old, good morning, right? So although Chachma and Bina seem to work hand in hand, and they seem to work in concert with each other, nonetheless, it's not a Sandy, help me out here. It's not a causal relationship, correct? Linear causality, where one is leading to the other. Chachma is giving birth to Bina, so to speak. That's not how it works. Each one has its own mother. Each one has its own source above. Yes? Correct? Did I get that right?
Sorry, I have a really bad connection, so I'm kind of in and out.
No worries. No worries. I feel the same way all the time myself. No, I'm kidding.
I know. It's like I'm getting half sentences I apologize.
No worries. I just mentioned it because
I'll just go ahead and agree with you.
Awesome.
Which
Okay.
is not like me, but I'll go ahead and
That's
do that.
fine. I only mentioned because you sent me after last week's,
Right.
after Sunday's class, different levels, different forms of causal relationships. So we have like a linear causality, which means that, in a progression, you have this thing, let's say A, that leads to B. And you could say causes B. A causes B. So you and I might think Chachma is the A that causes the B of Bina. Right? Chachma causes Bina. First you have the core idea, and then you expand it. A, B. Not how it works. Not how it works. A doesn't cause B, B doesn't cause A. It's not it. A comes from Nozer. B comes from Venake. Each one has its own source above. Right? One is not birthing the other. Yes. Are the 13 attributes of mercy? Yeah, I showed them to you before. You're saying how you number them 1 through 13? Yeah, there are. You could probably Google it, and there's probably a Wikipedia on it, which I haven't checked out. But there are in Kabbalah there are a few different systems for breaking down, because there's more than 13 words of how you break down those two verses into 13 attributes. There's the numbering system could differ, from one teaching to another teaching. But generally speaking, there's similar divisions. But anyway, the point of this is that Chachma and Bina, although they work in tandem, and they seem to work hand in hand and in sequence, right? First Chachma, then Bina. First you have the flash of insight, and then you develop it. Although that seems to be how it works, in truth, each one is its own universe. Each one is its own reality. Creative thought is its own universe, separate from analytical thought, and vice versa. Analytical thought is its own universe, separate from creative thought, and each one has its own source on high. So it's not like Bina is birthed by Chachma. No, Bina is not birthed by Chachma. Sometimes Bina will follow Chachma, the process will follow, but the process is an independent process that has its own source and own inspiration and source of energy. Does that make sense? So we have two independent systems that are working in proximity, but one is not necessarily giving birth to the other. And you know what the point of all this is? It's unbelievable. The point of all this is how two independent things and really opposite forces can exist in proximity and work together. Chachma and Bina can work together even though they're not from the same place, even though they're not from the same source, even though they don't share the same energy. They can still work together. You know what the message is? If our minds can figure it out, if we can have harmony in our heads, we can have harmony amongst peoples as well. That's the point of all this. I know that's not giving away the ending. This is where we're headed with all this. That the key to loving the other person as yourself, the key to harmony, the key to getting along with somebody, the key to accepting diversity and difference and embracing it begins by understanding that we're already doing this inside of ourselves. When we say love your fellow as yourself, you know what that means on a deeper Kabbalistic level? Just like you are all working together with all of the opposite and contradictory forces within yourself, but they all work in concert in harmony within yourself, make that same system work with your relationship with others. That despite the fact that you're different than the other person, work in proximity with them, work in harmony. In other words, two things don't have to be identical to work. Chachma and Bina are not identical. They're opposites. Chachma is the point, Bina is expansion. Chachma is abstract, Bina is concrete. Chachma is ayin, nothingness, right? Ethereal. Bina is yesh, somethingness. They have their own source, Nozer, Venake. Completely different energies and realities, and yet, wonder of wonders, they work together in the mind. How's that possible? Because we can figure it out. Because just because two things are different doesn't mean they can't work together. And that's a beautiful message for humanity. Just because we're different doesn't mean we can't work together. On the contrary, we need to work together. Why? Because like Chachma and Bina, they complement each other. We also complement each other. Human beings complement each other. I don't mean like, oh, that's a nice tie you're wearing. Although that's also true. We should be complementing each other. But human beings, we each bring our own energy to the table, and that's a good thing. Okay, so let's see how much time we have left. Okay, we have a good 6 minutes. Perfect. We're going to jump into a little bit text of our Kabbalistic text. And what we're going to do is read these themes inside. The important thing to remember from last week's text inside is that we're trying to break the notion that we might have had coming in that Chachma and Bina are really, one leads directly to the other. That was what we thought. That they represent the same, almost the same energy or like one gives birth to the other, or they're necessarily connected. And the point is they're not necessarily connected. Number one, a person could be strong in Chachma but weak in Bina. You could have somebody who's very creative but not great at, writing it out. You could have, conversely, someone who's strong in Bina but not strong in Chachma. Someone who's really strong in explaining things but not strong in creative thinking. You can also have a situation where a person knows something to be true, but can't explain it, right? They have a lot of chachma, they can see the idea, but they can't articulate it. Doesn't make it any less true, it just makes it less explained. And that's a reality, because chachma and bina are not necessarily inherently, intrinsically, essentially connected. So what I'm going to do now is share my screen with you, and let's jump back into the text. Okay, let's jump in. Let us jump in. Let me share my screen. Hecholtzu. This is our text. Okay, we started chapter 24 last week. We explained that. Here, I'm going to highlight some important sentences. In truth, however, they are not dependent. Chachma and Bina are not dependent on one another for their existence. Each has a separate source. That's the key theme of chapter 24. Chachma and Bina, although they work in tandem, each one has a separate source. They don't come from the same place, and one doesn't give birth to the other. And we said an illustration, a proof of this is, you have innovative thinkers who are not analytically minded. They can innovate, but they have trouble analyzing. By contrast, you have people that are analyzers, but are not initiators. Right? You have one and not the other, or the other and not the one. Okay. And we talked about the person, the rabbi in the Talmud, who maintained that this was something is not fit. It's muktzah. It's you can't handle it on the holidays. And the rabbis asked him why, and he was silent. Right? Rav was silent. We said this last week. He was unable to articulate rationally the difference, the reason for his position. Nevertheless, he did not recant his position. Why not? Because his chachma mandated that it be thus. He was merely unable to translate this into a rational explanation level of Bina. So you could have chachma. The point of this is you could have chachma without Bina and Bina without chachma, and that's what we're going to say right here, bottom paragraph on this page. Thus, let's pick it up from right here. We find the possibility of chachma without Bina and Bina without chachma. For they are distinct faculties, each having a separate source. Here we go. Chachma originates in the Mazel, the constellation, the flow of Nozer, 13 attributes of mercy. And Bina originates in the Mazel of Venake, two distinct sources. The brackets, which are not in the original. The brackets are an explanation of the editors to explain it for the reader. So let's read it, although this is what I spent the first hour and 20 minutes of this class explaining, but let's read this inside, a short version of this explanation. Nozer and Venake are two of the 13 supernal attributes comprised in the following passage. And the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, Lord, Lord, Havaya, Havaya, benevolent God, who is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in kindness and truth. He preserves Notezer, kindness for 2,000 generations, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin, and he cleanses Venake. So the two words, the two of the 13 that we're focusing on is Nozer, which is preserves. I use the word withholds or reserves, but here it says preserves, which is also fine. And the word Venake, the number 13, which is cleanses. Mazel in this context means flow from the word Nozel, i.e. the flow of spiritual vitality from the two aforementioned or above mentioned levels. Again, just to be very clear here, we have the two of the 13 attributes of mercy, which are flowing down to form the sources of Chachma and Bina. Chachma originating in Nozer and Bina originating in Venake. Now he analyzes the sources. Indeed, the two sources in the 13 attributes of mercy are the opposite of one another. Nozer preserves, connotes non-expansion, i.e. non-existence. Nozer connotes ayin nothingness, whereas the Mazel of Venake, cleanses, is related to doing kindness, a form of deed, hence expansion, in order to create an entity that does have its own existence. So I think I should explain this, because he's now connecting Nozer and Venake to ayin and yesh, to nothingness and somethingness. Nothingness, of course, being the energy of Chachma, which is when you understand something creatively, but you don't really understand it because you can't yet explain it. So it's an understanding, but on a non-logical level. So it's a non-understanding understanding. That's the creative Chachma. And Bina is where you've broken it down and you've made sense of it and it's very tangible. That's the difference between Nozer and Venake. Why Nozer and Venake? Nozer means preserving kindness for 2,000 generations, right? So if you think about it, if you think about preserving kindness or withholding, the concept of withholding means you're not sharing, you're kind of in the modality of holding it, preserving it, keeping it. So, different kids, different personalities. You give one kid a cookie, they're going to eat the cookie right away. The other kid is going to hold it all day. You know what I'm talking about? Yes? When it comes to eating? Some people, when they get a cookie, they eat the cookie. Some people, they love having the cookie. Correct? Yes? And they'll work the cookie the whole day because they like it so much. They don't want to eliminate it. They want to keep it around. Okay, so Nozer is God preserving the kindness, preserving the blessing of the mitzvah for a long time. So it's holding it around, but not expressing it, not expanding it. It's kind of keeping it in. Whereas Venake, cleansing, is an action. It's cleansing. It's expressing the cleansingness or the forgiveness. So one is holding and one is giving, cleansing. So one is ayin. Ayin is kind of like withdrawn. It's that flash of insight that's not broken down and explained, but it's kind of withheld, right? Even for oneself, it's almost withheld because you don't really understand it yet. You just have a concept, but you don't really have it understood on all of its particulars. And then Venake is the cleansing, which means the expansion, which is breaking it down. So
Can I ask you something about the Hebrew?
Yeah, for sure.
In the Venake, there are actually two different meanings depending on how you spell it. Cleansing, lenakot, is with a kuf, and Venake with a chaf or kaf has a different meaning. And it seems that in the first part you were using Venake with the chaf, and all of a sudden it switched to lenakot with cleansing.
No,
clean.
the Hebrew. So
and
just
Venake is like deducing, and it made a lot of sense. But all of a sudden, this has a different meaning when you use a different spelling of the word.
The word only has one spelling. It's with a kuf. The word is with a kuf. So to answer your question, there's only one meaning. The meaning of Venake is cleansing. It's with a kuf. Lenakot, to clean. So God is saying,
the way we were describing it before was more like with the chaf.
I didn't intend to describe it with a chaf. I don't think I gave that translation. Venake is the cleansing. It's in the sense of Yanika, it's also with a kuf, right? When I said that Venake and Yanika, which
for sure with the kuf, yes.
Right. So there was never a chaf. There was never the other thing mentioned. It's always with a kuf. It means nurturing or nursing,
Yeah.
and it also means cleansing. And the two are not mutually exclusive, but they both connote the notion of expansion. Right? Look what he says over here. Nozer connotes non-expansion. Right? Venake connotes expansion. Well, expansion is the same thing that happens to a baby when a baby is eating. What happens really when anyone eats, right? But you see it more in the growth of a child who goes from really small to big as opposed to an adult, which doesn't usually have a lot of expansion. Maybe a little expansion, but not that much expansion. Right? Venake is nurturing. It's nursing. It's also cleansing. They're not mutually exclusive. All the meanings are connected. What it means is, collectively, it means this notion of expansion, as opposed to Nozer, which I said before is the pipe. And here it's the idea of preserving. It's again the same thing. The pipe, I said, is extending into the nothingness, into that, to the ether, to the ether, to the beyond, to the non-physical, to the non-material. And it's from there drawing down, but it remains in the state of nothingness, so to speak, or non-expansion. So the bottom line is, and we'll have to close it out. We can't go further today because we're already a little past the time. So it's fine. We'll close it out here and we'll continue next week. The bottom line here is that we have two different sources above. In other words, before the logical stuff, before the intellectual powers of the mind, we have two sources on high. One source is like this. One source is like this. One is contraction and one is expansion. One is withholding and one is giving. One is preserving and one is cleansing. One is channeling the pipe and one is expanding through the nursing, through the nurturing. Two different energies, within and without. Ayin and yesh, nothingness and somethingness. And these two energies, these two abstract energies, serve as the respective sources of Chachma and Bina. Chachma, the intellectual power of nothingness, the unknown. And Bina, the intellectual power of the known and the fleshed out. One where the idea is withheld, even from oneself. And one where the idea is developing and open for all, including oneself. Two different realities, two different worlds, but as I said before, working in tandem, working hand in hand, or brain in brain, mind in mind, which gives hope for a possibility of human beings getting along. If our minds can work together, when I say work together, within our own mind, if we can have a creative idea and then flesh it out, if we can hear something and explain it, if we have that ability, it doesn't always work out, right? Sometimes you have one without the other, like we just explained a moment ago. But if our minds can work together, then maybe people can also work together, even though we come from different places, even though we have different personalities and different traits, and we look different, we sound different, we speak different, we dress different, we behave different. It doesn't matter. We can all work together, just like the mind works together. Chachma is radically different than Bina, and yet, Trey Rein the Loy Mispardin, Kabbalah says. Chachma and Bina are like two friends that never separate. They're like two best buddies that don't separate. Because most of the time, although we had exceptions that we explained to break that causality, nonetheless, they do usually work together. And the same thing is true with us. So, let this inspire all of us this week to reach out beyond our comfort zone and connect with someone else who appears on the surface perhaps different than us, understanding that it's when we do so that the great things happen. This week, we have on Thursday, Wednesday night and Thursday, we have the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, which is the day that the temples, the holy temples, were destroyed in Jerusalem, both holy temples, the first and the second, on the same day. The second temple was destroyed because we didn't get along with each other. And if we were able to heal that and get along with each other, the temple would be rebuilt and we would have what we all want, which is world peace. Which means that the key to healing the world is, I know I'm about to go on a radical limb right now, the key to healing the world is, get this, healing the world. The key to peace is, I know it's crazy, getting along with someone else, peace. So, let us be inspired by today's session, which was very abstract and very Kabbalistic. I hope you enjoyed that exploration of the beyond. So let's be inspired by the point of today's discussion, which is two completely different energies that work most of the time hand in hand, that we should also be inspired to work hand in hand with our brothers and sisters, where they are, no matter where they are, or what they do, or what they look like, etc. Let's cut through the barriers that separate us and recognize the commonality that ultimately Chachma and Bina are coming from the same ultimate source, although they come from different immediate sources within the 13 attributes of mercy. But who has the 13 attributes of mercy? The one God. So they ultimately do come from the same source. Let's recognize that we all come from the same source as well. And when we heal ourselves and we heal the frictions that exist between us, the blessings will flow. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. I'm already thinking about tonight. I'm about to mention tonight. Thank you for joining me this morning. And I look forward to seeing you next week and tonight as well, which I'll speak about in a moment. All right, this concludes Kabbalah Coffee, but stay on for some important announcements.